My name is Connor Brown. I'm 29, and this is my testimony. I was born and raised essentially in a Christian church, Christian family. Both parents are Christians. When I was given the choice at 18 and I graduated high school, I decided not to go to church. Growing up, I was so sheltered that I wanted to experience these things that all my other friends were talking about. Always going out drinking with those friends, partying with those friends. That was also the first time that I smoked. I graduated boot camp, went to A school, graduated A school, and then I proposed to my then girlfriend. We weren't founded in a godly relationship. Now I have this failing relationship with my wife. I had a huge porn addiction. I was out in the street. I was drinking all the time. So I took a knife. I called my brother. It was 3 in the morning. There's no reason why he should be up. And he answered on the first ring. I broke down in tears. He stayed on the phone with me until this thing we have in the Navy called Fleet and Family opened up where I could get counseling. Later on, he told me that he had randomly woken up right before I called him and that it was strange for me to call him at 3 in the morning. My friends hyped me up the whole time. They were like, he's a straight up dog. Like, this guy is him, bro. It led to a lot of emptiness. I said the Shahada in the eyes of the law, and I was a Muslim. We kind of went over like what happened in that past week, and I found out that she had slept with 2 people. That broke me. How could someone that I love do that to me? All the friends that I thought I had, they had all abandoned me. Broken and hurt. I felt alone. I felt like I was by myself, and that hurt probably harder than the divorce hurt. And I was filled with anger. I was hurt. I was filled with rejection. I essentially wanted to kill myself again. And then like, okay, well, what if I gave you the order, I don't like this guy, shoot him in the head? I can't do that. That to me was the difference between right and wrong, and delivering that I wasn't meant to be a SEAL. I wanted to be a SEAL because I wanted to go through buds. I knew that this was the path to go that causes the most struggle. I wanted to go through Hell Week. I wanted to just put myself through the most excruciating amount of pain to prove that I could take it, to prove that I was the best of the best. And I made myself into this complex of that I was better than the people that abandoned me, and I can prove it by doing this. I had developed this mindset that because I denied Jesus, that even if I did want to come back, that Jesus didn't want me back. It was hard to go through because it was this guy that was like, how did I mess up so bad? My name is Connor Brown. I'm 29. I was raised in Columbus, Georgia, and this is my testimony. I was born and raised essentially in a Christian church, Christian family. Both parents are Christians, and this in and out every Sunday, Wednesday, anytime the church was getting together, we were there. My dad was super involved. My dad was essentially a deacon at every church that we went to. My mother was in the praise team at every church that we went to. We only really went to I want to say 3 churches growing up, and my parents split, and then we went to a church called Wimbrook Baptist Church and Emmanuel Baptist Church. Growing up, going to those churches, I mean, they're both Southern Baptist churches, so it wasn't really that far off from each other. They just had different communities. The people, we grew up around them, and but I was never really going there for church. I would really just go there for the people. We went to every event that was going on, whether it be this thing called Sold Out or Extreme. We would travel to Gatlinburg, Tennessee for these different occasions where they would have Christian concerts. I saw Skillet, Hillsong, all these different artists that you see like top charts. I saw them, and it was fun. Everything was fun, and I had at some point felt like a genuine connection, but I feel like it was so forced that it wasn't me. So when I was given the choice at 18 and I graduated high school, I decided not to go to church. At that point, growing up, I was so sheltered that I wanted to experience these things that all my other friends were talking about. And so I wanted to experience it for myself. And so when I stopped going to church, I started getting involved in all of the things that they were talking about. I grew up in an army town, so all the people that I was hanging out with at that point, besides my childhood best friend, was these army guys, and essentially the first thing that got me introduced to this lifestyle was um, my this guy that I met through my childhood best friend. We had the same exact birthday, and we wanted to throw a birthday party for us, right? So we got the army friend to make a house party for us, and from then on, it was just the start of that lifestyle. I was always going out drinking with those friends, partying with those friends, and that was also the first time that I smoked. Actually, the first time I smoked, it wasn't even me. It was like my childhood best friend who convinced me. He was like, this should be a good opportunity for you to experience this. And I kept telling him no because I didn't really want to get into drugs, but I just wanted to drink. And then there was another girl at the party sitting down at a couch, and I was like, you know what? She looks like she's pretty strong. Like, let me just, if I say like, if she does it, I'll do it. I'll get out of the situation. So that's what I said. And then I go down to play some video games, and then my best friend comes up to me. He's like, it's your turn. And I'm like, there's no way that she just did this. And I turned around and she's smoking, and I'm like, dang. I'm like, I gave my best friend my word. Now I have to follow through. So I smoked for the first time, and then I smoked relatively a number of times after that. But that was the gateway, and this whole thing started the gateway lifestyle to partying. Eventually, I was 21. I had dead-end jobs that were not going, all that great for me, and my parents told me that I either joined the military or I went to school. And I definitely didn't want to go to school at the time, so I chose, and I had wanted to join the military, but my parents didn't want me to join the military because I was so impulsive. But they realized that them preventing me from doing this stuff, I was just in a stalemate in my life, essentially. So I joined the military, and I essentially I started going into this place called Gracie Barra Jiu-Jitsu to get my cardio back for the military. I hadn't trained Jiu-Jitsu since I was 18 or 19. I took a couple years off because I definitely couldn't afford it on my own. And I met my, who is then going to be my future wife at Gracie Barra Jiu-Jitsu. And then once I went off to boot camp, I graduated boot camp, went to A school, graduated A school, and then I proposed to my then girlfriend to be my wife, and we went to our first duty station together, or my first duty station together, and but it was never, we weren't founded in a godly relationship. That itself opened a lot of problems up, and it was just a rough time from the start to finish. Not only was my work not going well, because it was just it was a really small command, so we didn't really have a lot to go off of. It wasn't a busy schedule, but they made it a busy schedule for no reason. And then on top of not being able to be home all that much, now I have this failing relationship with my wife that's it's not going well, it's falling apart. I had a huge porn addiction, and it definitely caused its own problems in our relationship, and which eventually led to infidelity. Not on me, but it was from her feeling like she was neglected, so she went out and sought attention from other places. Those led to their own problems. Eventually, we separated, and then she went back to Georgia, and I was stationed in New York, so I stayed in New York. And I had developed a drinking problem. And that drinking problem was, it was predicted by like my parents, her, a bunch of people, based off of like my previous partying habits. But I developed a drinking problem. On top of that, because she had left, I started going out more. I was out in the streets. I was drinking with my buddies. I was drinking with my coworkers. I was drinking all the time, and I was going out and I was trying to. Honestly, I was just in pain, and one morning I was drinking on my own, and I was trying to call my ex-wife when we were still married, and I was just trying to call and make sure she was okay, and she answered the phone and she was like, "I don't understand why you called me." She's like, "I'm fine," and I'm like, "I just wanted to check on you," and then she was just like, "I don't understand why you still do it," and she got into, my family doesn't like me, my coworkers don't like me, she didn't like me, why are you still stick around? And she convinced me that I really didn't have a reason. And so I prayed about it and I said, I know I don't have a good relationship with you right now, God, but if this is your purpose for me, then let it be known. Like, I'm going to make a call, and if this person doesn't answer, then I'm going to take it as a hint that she's right. So I took a knife and I called my brother, and my brother has a family. He had either a daughter on the way or a newborn, and it was 3 a.m. There's no reason why he should be up, and so I called him, and he answered on the first ring, and I broke down in tears, and I explained to him everything, and he stayed on the phone with me until this thing we have in the Navy called Fleet and Family opened up where I could get counseling. Later on, he told me that he had randomly woken up right before I called him, and that it was strange for me to call him at 3 a.m. So we, after I got my divorce, I was back in Georgia and drinking, still going out, that sort of stuff. I had not really reconnected with God at all, and I just wanted to continue my life the way it was going, which, it wasn't going in a good direction. Later on, I got orders to Bahrain for the first time. It was in 2020. I showed up to Bahrain. It was peak COVID time, so everything was always shut down. And if you weren't at work, you really couldn't be out in town, so people just had house parties all the time. That's where I met one of my best friends, and we thought we ran Bahrain. And we were out in Bahrain all the time, just at house parties, jumping from house party to house party, and we were just drinking all the time. We were getting into a ton of fights, and we were not losing the fight, so we thought that we were so cool. We thought that we were we were them. And I was sleeping around. I had a problem. I had such a fear of abandonment that in my eyes, if I abandoned them first, they can't hurt me. So I decided that I didn't want a relationship, that I just wanted to do my thing and get out of there. So I decided to do that. My friends hyped me up the whole time. They were like, he's a straight up dog. Like, this guy is him, bro. And it led to a lot of emptiness. And every time you're off work, you're just going out drinking with your friends and partying. And eventually I met this girl who was a local. She is a local. And we started dating. And then I met her parents. And her parents didn't take me seriously until I converted to Islam so that we could get married. And I was still scared of marriage at the time because I had just had one of the worst marriages I could have had as a first marriage. And I felt like a failure from that still. And so it took some time, but I eventually converted to Islam. I had already had my issues. I didn't know how Jesus could be God and man, and then how the Trinity worked. There was a lot that I didn't understand and a lot that I couldn't wrap my head around. So I never went to a mosque. I contacted the sheikh on WhatsApp, and the sheikh essentially sent me a bunch of videos to watch, a test to take, and once I passed the test, they're like, okay, they're like, let me know when you want to, say the shahada, and then you're in. And so I did that. I said the shahada, and I was essentially, in the eyes of the law in Bahrain, I was a Muslim. Uh, so once I did that, the parents were like, the next time you want to see our daughter, it has to be for marriage. And so I was prepared to marry. I called my brother, and I was like, hey man, I'm gonna marry this girl. And my brother's like, well, why don't you take a week? Why don't you take a week, and then once you, still feel the same way, then go through with it. But if you don't, then this is your sign that you're going too fast and you need to take a step back. So I took a week, and I got connected back with her, and we kind of went over like what happened in that past week, and I found out that she had slept with 2 people, and that broke me. How could someone that I love do that to me? How could someone that I love, after a week of being, not together, just go out and do that? And to her, she was like, well, we were on a break, so it was pretty much free game. But to me, I couldn't do that to her, so it didn't make sense to me. So we broke up, and all the friends that I thought I had from during that time in our relationship, when I had I'd never had free time because I was always hanging out with these friends, they had all abandoned me. They had all, all the friends that I thought I made through her, they had all abandoned me as well. And so I was back down to broken and hurt, and I felt alone. I felt like I was by myself, and that hurt probably harder than the divorce hurt, because at least during the divorce, I thought I had my family, and I thought I had my friends, and I had these people that I'd met outside of everything. But this time I'm in a separate country. All of the people that I thought I made a connection with, that I thought I was a close friend with, that I party with all the time, they're nowhere to be found. And now it's just me. And I was filled with anger. I was hurt. I was filled with rejection. And it led me down. I essentially wanted to kill myself again. And it was one of the hardest probably moments that I had to go through. And it fueled a desire for special forces. I wanted to be a part of a brotherhood that didn't want me for the relationship that I was in, that wanted me because of who I am. And I wanted to be a SEAL at the time. I was filled with so much hatred, and I was filled with hurt. I was filled with regret. And I felt like no matter how much pain I go through, it's not going to be as much pain as I'm feeling right now. No matter how much pain I'm going through, I can go through the hurt of the pain from my body better than I can go through the pain in my head. And it led me to train every day, all day. I was probably training like 7 or 8 hours a day when I wasn't working. When I was working, I was training still about 2 or 3 hours a day. And I was getting just outrageous numbers, just because it was who I had fueled myself to be. I was always thinking about what people did to me to fuel this anger, to feel this hatred, to train harder, better, faster, and make these people regret everything that they had thought about me, because I'm like, you know what, you could have been a part of this if you would have stuck around. I did this for a couple years, and I eventually met a SEAL team that I hung out with to see if it was the right fit. And when I hung out with these guys, the mentality was different. I'm not a psychopath, or at least I don't try to be, like think I am. But these guys were just different. These guys, we had same interests, similar interests, but these guys just had no middle ground of right and wrong, and they just did what they're told, and which is fine. Like, I'm not one to judge, but I'm not that. So I went through an interview with a SEAL chief, and the interview wasn't like, oh, so how long you been in the Navy? What is this? It was all scenario based. It was, okay, so we're on mission, and your boys are out doing 8 balls, and they're just high as a kite, and then you find out that we have to do a jump tomorrow. What do you do? I'm like, okay, bet I can just get everybody to get back to the mindset. And he goes, okay, are you gonna tell anybody? It's like, no. It's like, I'm not gonna put out anybody's information like that. Like, it's not my information to put out, but I'm gonna make sure that everybody's ready to go. Those weren't the questions that I struggled with. It was the questions about murder. They said, if we were deployed and you see a kid with a gun and it's essentially a potential threat to kill to harm your team, what do you do? Like, I'm not gonna like it, but he has a gun. Like, if he's there to shoot at my team, I'm taking him out. Like, I'm not second guessing it, and I'm just gonna live with it. And he's like, okay. He's like, what if this kid doesn't have a gun? He doesn't have anything on him, and you can't see any threat. And I'm like, I'm not shooting him. If he doesn't have a gun, I'm not. If there's no reason to believe that this kid is about to do any harm, I won't do it. He's like, okay. He's like, what about if it's an adult? I said, it doesn't matter if it's a kid or an adult. Like, if there's nothing wrong with the person, they're innocent, I wouldn't do that. And then, like, okay, well, what if I gave you the order, I don't like this guy, shoot him in the head? I can't do that. That, to me, was the difference between right and wrong, and delivering that I wasn't meant to be a SEAL. Like, this wasn't, the path for me. And but the SEAL chief liked my honesty, and he still wanted me to go to BUDS. And in my mind, BUDS, I didn't want to be a SEAL to be a SEAL. I wanted to be a SEAL because I wanted to go through BUDS. I knew that this was the essentially hardest path to go, that causes the most struggle. I wanted to go through Hell Week. I wanted to just put myself through the most excruciating amount of pain to prove that I could take it, to prove that I was the best of the best. And I made myself into this complex of that I was better than the people that abandoned me and the people that hurt me. And I had this superior complex of I'm better than them, and I can prove it by doing this. Later on, I realized that the SEAL teams weren't the right path for me, and I learned about the Green Berets. And the Green Berets have this motto, "Die oppressor libere," and it essentially means, liberate the oppressed. And going through meeting a team of Green Berets and hanging out with them, I was like, this is it. This is the group of people I've been looking for, because they have the same mentality. They're not there to murder people. They're there to protect people against harm. And for me, that made sense. So I had this mentality of training for this, and my mind was set on putting the Green Berets on a pedestal. Nothing else came ahead of that. Nothing. If my friends wanted to go out, sorry, I'm training. If jiu-jitsu came in the way, I'm doing this, but I'll do jiu-jitsu after. If anything came up, I was training for the Green Berets before I was doing anything else, and I got into insane shape, and I was ready for it. Once I left Bahrain and I went to Greece, I just took the year that I was there for training, and all I did all day, every day, was train for the Green Berets. Everybody knew that I wanted to be that guy. I was training to be a Green Beret. At my command, when we do our physical fitness tests, everybody was competing against me to have the best test scores, to have the best physical scores, because I was him. Like, I was that guy who was, I'm going to be the best, and nobody's going to stop me from being the best. I got 120 push-ups. We were doing planks. I was doing 5-minute planks. I got an 8:20 mile-and-a-half run. Nothing was going to stop me from doing this. I get tattoos a lot, or I used to, and I got a tattoo on my leg, and I didn't treat it well, especially with going to work. So my leg got infected, and it stopped me from working out. It stopped me from doing what I wanted to do with my day, and it forced me to stay inside of my house. And I hadn't been put in a situation that forced me to be by myself, where I wasn't doing anything. And that scared me because I was forced to face the fact that I was alone. And I was forced to face the fact that I didn't have anybody there with me. And I had friends, but those friends were like kind of like, halfway friends, halfway, they were more acquaintances than they were friends. And it forced me, I was on Instagram, I was doing all these things, and I got deep into conspiracy theories. And I had never dropped the Muslim thing. I had still practiced, not like practice like praying 5 times a day, not practice reading the Quran essentially, but I was practicing not eating pork, that sort of thing. And I still, if people ask me, I still identified as a Muslim. And I was getting into these conspiracy theories, and some of them were way off, like way out there, and then some of them were like not that far off. And one of them was talking about how the Hollywood was sex trafficking kids and all this stuff, and I'm like, yeah, I can believe that, right? And then I got to one where it was talking about this guy he was on his way to fame, and he was going to this Hollywood party, and at the Hollywood party, he was around a bunch of demonic things, and he saw a bunch of famous people, and he wasn't allowed to say who it was. He would have been allowed to say where it was, but he said if they were famous, they were there. And he said that essentially they performed a satanic ritual, and he wasn't a religious person, and it made him at least believe in God. Like, he's like, okay, well, if Satan exists, then that means God has to exist. And it made me think, and I'm like, okay, well, if Satan does exist, then that means that God has to exist, and maybe I need to rethink the way that I'm going about things, because if I'm wrong and the Bible is true, then I'm not on the right path. So I was talking to my dad about it. My dad was constantly like trying to tell me, he was like, hey man, Jesus loves you, and he died on the cross for you. And I'm like, yeah, I don't disagree with that. Like, I don't disagree that Jesus died on the cross. I think there's proof that he died on the cross, but I don't understand this stuff. And my dad kept trying to explain it to me, and it was just never clicking. And I had developed this mindset that because I denied Jesus, that even if I did want to come back, that Jesus didn't want me back. And it was hard to go through, because it was this guy that was like, how did I mess up so bad that I sorry.
No worries.
Oh, man. But how did I mess up so bad that the one person that was there for everything, the one person that would love me through everything, I had abandoned. And it hurt. I'm good. I appreciate it. It's fine. I'll just set it down to the side. And it hurt because this whole time that I've abandoned everybody else before they could abandon me, I abandoned Jesus. And I didn't think that he wanted me back because of it. And I didn't give up on it, obviously. I prayed, and I talked to my dad, and then I was like, okay, God, this is what I'm struggling with. This is what I need help with. And I had 2 questions. I said, if you are real, and if Jesus is God, where? How? I don't understand, and I just want to understand. And I prayed for like 20 minutes where I was just begging God to just give me an answer. And then the second question that I had was, if Jesus died on the cross, why was it to save us from our sins if he could just forgive us of our sins? Like, why did it have to happen? And I couldn't make sense of it. And for me, if I can't make sense of something and it doesn't make sense, I won't believe it, because I need it to be logically, make sense logically. And being by myself and having this sense of loneliness, it was I was depending on these answers, and I was depending on these answers to be, my saving grace. And I prayed for like 20 minutes. I didn't get any answers. I was like, God, I'm not asking for much. I just need to know this stuff. And I just felt like it was a lost cause, because I didn't understand. I didn't know. And I was like, hey, this is it. This was my last chance, and I got nothing. So I went back on Instagram just to kill time. And the first post that came up was Stuart Nechtel on a podcast. I had seen him before, but I had never seen him like this. And the first thing was, the question that I asked. And that was the first time I felt like I had a prayer that was answered. And he asked Stuart, where does God say that he's God in the Bible? And Stuart had answers for him. And the first one was talking about the crippled man that came through the roof, where Jesus not only says, only God can forgive you of your sins, and here I am telling you, I forgive you of your sins. There is another example of when he was saying, before Moses was, I am. And there was a reference to God at the burning bush when Moses asked him, he says, who are you? And he says, I am who I am. And I was speechless. And then I was like, okay, God, you've answered the first question. Now what about the second question? And somehow it just clicked. I don't even know how to explain it, but it clicked. And it was almost like God put the thought in my head, because I couldn't come up with it on my own. And I had spent years trying to. And God needed Jesus to die on the cross, not just to die on the cross, but to show his strength over death. And if Jesus didn't die on the cross, it wouldn't have had as much power as it had. It wouldn't have showed as much power with Jesus, with power with the cross, with power with the message. And it was also him fulfilling the blood of the Old Testament, and starting the blood of the New Covenant. And I cried for a while, and then I started watching The Chosen, and then I just cried even more. Every episode of The Chosen, I just found myself in tears, and I asked God to forgive me, and I asked God to take me back. And I considered myself a Christian, and that was the first time I really felt the love of Jesus. But I didn't want to give everything to Jesus. I wasn't ready to give everything to Jesus. I wasn't connecting myself with the church. I told my parents that I had recommitted my life to Jesus, and they were so proud of me, but I didn't want to drop everything for Jesus, to deny myself. So I was still going out, I was still partying, but I was trying to hold these Bible studies. I was trying to teach people who Jesus was, but I was still doing this stuff, and I wasn't living in doctrine. And eventually, I had become a part of a business called Party Lux, and the idea of the business was to promote clubs and show the male to female ratios at clubs, and we thought it was the next best thing. And I was getting in business with people that I had people warn me about these people, and granted, these people were my friends, and I thought these people were like some of my closest friends. And Party Lux was, the craziest thing is I kept praying that, if this is God's will, then it will keep going in the right direction. And granted, it went in the direction that, I thought it would have taken if it was God's will. But in reality, it was never God's will, and I don't think I was that God was doing this. I think it was Satan doing this, and all it was leading me down a path that wasn't going to be helpful in my walk with God. Once I got back to Bahrain, I had orders back to Bahrain, and I got back to Bahrain, and I just went straight into working on the business and club promoting and getting drunk all the time and being out there with my supposed friends. And I was still praying, and I was like, okay, God, help us do this. And things were moving in the right direction, but it was, again, I don't think it was God that was making it move in the right direction, and I don't think that it was God that I don't think God would put his hand in something like that would lead us into stuff of the world. And eventually, we were developing ideas that were going to be great for Party Lux, but I kept clashing with the other owners because I think they were getting pretty prideful, or I was getting prideful, and we had ideas, and we were like, okay, no, this idea next, and one of the people that I consider one of my best friends, he kept telling me, I think you should be, the one who's overall in charge. I think you would be better overall in charge. Do you want to be overall in charge? And I'm like, no, I don't think that's healthy. I think that we're good the way we are. But I didn't realize that he was also telling the other person that I think Connor wants to be overall in charge. I think Connor wants to be the one running the business. And it eventually caused a divide, and these guys that I was in business with eventually voted me out of the company, and they didn't even, it was such a betrayal the way it happened. If they had just told me that things weren't working out, then I would have been fine. But it was the way that they went about it, and the way that they went about voting me out so that I couldn't get any of the money that I invested into it back, or I couldn't do anything with it, and I couldn't do anything with the ideas that I had invested into the business. And it was a betrayal. And I'd never had someone I consider my best friend betray me like that. I've had women abandon me, from all this time when, but I never had one of my closest guy friends feel like they abandoned me. And I went back to by myself, don't trust anybody, don't do any of these things, and just stick to your own self, and just prepare for special forces. And so I kept preparing to be a Green Beret. I was training all the time, and I was just preparing to go off to the Army to be a Green Beret. And my numbers were really good. I got a coach who actually helped me get my numbers even better than what they were. And my coach was like, dude, if your numbers are this, then you're going to be fine. And I was supposed to go off to selection in October of 2024. And the way things happened was I wasn't notified that I had been classed up for selection up until about 5 days before selection was supposed to happen. And I was told by everybody, because my recruiter wasn't responding to me because everything was going on, that I wasn't going to selection. And then I got told that I got classed up 2 days later. And my recruiter finally started sending me a bunch of messages. He was trying to get me on track to go. And I was doing a separation career development board to figure out, how my career went and how to successfully transition out of the military. And I went into this career development board, and my career counselor was telling me, we're not saying no, but we need the information about this stuff, make sure that everything is good to go. But at the same time that all this stuff was going on, a bad flood hit where my parents live in North Carolina. And we didn't have communication with my stepmother. My dad had just flown out to be with his best friend in the Philippines for a trip, and my stepmother stayed back home. And the flood hit, and we lost all communication with her. So we were trying to get communication back. We were calling the local police to try to see if they could get a car out to there, and the roads had been destroyed, so they had no way to get out there. And I was so confused. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to think. My chain of command was trying to work with me on trying to get the Coast Guard out to visit my mom to make sure she was okay, my stepmother. And on top of it, I had just gotten information saying that I was going to North Carolina to go to selection. And all of these, it felt like my world was like falling apart because I just wasn't prepared for any of this stuff. And then I was essentially trying to pray, and I was like, okay, God, like, I need help. Like, I can't do this on my own. And I had already, from a couple years back, from recognizing God, from God having these answers for me, I had already felt a calling to go into ministry because of my story, and because I've never had an issue talking to people, and I figured, God has given me this gift to use it, then I'm going to use it. But my set goal was to do the minimum contract necessary for a Green Beret, which was 6 years, and then go straight into ministry and eventually become a pastor, to do MMA, to do whatever I could do to further God's ministry, to do that after I did the Green Beret stuff. And going through this lineup to go to selection, my CEO and I talked, and he was saying, well, are you prepared? And he wasn't asking me if I was mentally prepared or physically prepared. He was asking me if I had everything that I needed to make a good impression with these Green Berets. And the truth was that I didn't have it, because I didn't even know that I needed a pack-out list to have this stuff for when I checked in. And I overall made the decision that I wasn't prepared enough, and I didn't want to make a bad impression, so I denied going. And I made the decision that I was going to go back to selection in March, and it would have been about a week from now that I would go off to pursue selection. All I had been building myself up for years was selection. All I'd been hyping myself up for years was selection. All I'd been doing for years was developing myself to be an asset for selection, that I would be the guy that people depended on, that people knew that they could count on for selection. And after the date for selection passed in October, I had made the decision that after going through probably the most anxiety I've gone in a while, that I can't do things on my own. It's never gone right for me, that I had to give it up to God. And so I made a decision in Halloween night that I was going to devote, everything to God. That I can't do it on my own, and that I surrender to God. And um, I was getting more developed into my relationship with God. I was starting to read the Bible a little bit more, um, and my parents had sent me books on, spirituality, and these biblical scholars, but I hadn't really opened it yet. And then um, I went through this thing called TAPS. It's supposed to prepare you for getting out of the military and going into civilian life. And going through there, the instructors were, I felt like TAPS was a waste of time because I wasn't getting out of the military. I was leaving the Navy for the Army. So I just thought this whole thing was just a waste of time. And I tried to talk to the instructors, and I said, hey, I think this is a waste of time for me. Is there an opportunity that I can just not be a part of this, and I can just dip out of here and then collect the certificate that I showed up at the end? They're like, hey man, sorry, it doesn't work like that. A lot of the stuff won't apply to you, so you'll be just sitting here, but at least you're here. And we were going through this thing where we were developing our resume, and the whole time we were developing our resume, and I was just like, well, how does my future, like, how does the job transitions really flow in together? And they're like, okay, well, what's your job transition? I said, well, I'm an investigator for NCIS right now, and I'm going to Special Forces, and then I'm going to go in to be a pastor. And then they were like, well, you haven't gone to be Special Forces yet, so let's just go with the practical one, and let's say investigator to pastor. And so we did that, and the way that they transitioned everything, it made sense. And then we were doing this thing where we were having to check job boards. And I was like, well, nothing on here is for Special Forces. Nothing on here is for, to be a contractor or whatever. And then they're like, well, why don't you do it to be a pastor? Why don't you do this stuff to be in ministry? And then the more I was doing this stuff, the more I felt a calling to go into ministry. The more I felt like this is what I'm supposed to be doing right now. And I didn't want to accept it because I was so dead set on Special Forces that I didn't want to accept the aspect of ministry right now. And I talked to my parents about it. My parents recommended that I go see the chaplain on base. And I went to see the chaplain on base, and the chaplain, I wanted an answer. I said, am I supposed to be pursuing Special Forces, or am I supposed to go into ministry? And then he's like, well, I can't really give you an answer, but I'll give you a book. And that book was called Rediscovering Jonah. Once I read the book, it was like the first 2 pages were almost immediately talking about me. It was talking about Jonah the entire time, but I felt like it was like going towards what I was doing. And I was like, how could this thing be the same thing, but this situation happened thousands of years ago? And it was talking about how Jonah had a calling that he didn't want to accept. Yes, his calling was completely different than mine. His calling was to go out and to preach to Nineveh and do something completely different than what I was going to do, because I was trying to go Special Forces and go out to bad areas, not to preach, but to defend people that couldn't defend themselves. But it wasn't about what he was going out there doing. It was about the process of God telling him he had a calling, and him denying the calling. And for me, I had realized what I was doing was I was saying, okay, God, I understand that this is what you want from me. Like, I get it. Like, this is what I feel called to do. But I already made this plan. Like, I already made this plan before I devoted my life to you, of doing this for 6 years, because it's the minimum contract. It's like literally like I don't have a choice over the time. But this is what I want to do, and then I'll follow this. And I had realized that I kept praying to God saying, God, do your will in my life, do your will in my life, do your will in my life. And then I was doing my own. And then it went into, if your identity isn't in Christ, then what is it in? Because if people, when they see you, they don't see Christ, what do they see? And if you're not putting Christ as your top priority, you're not a Christian. Like, it's that Christians can't put stuff above Christ. And then it talked about worshiping any God other than the God in the Bible is false idolatry. And then I realized I don't even know what the God of the Bible is. Christ isn't at the top of my list right now, and I've been putting special forces above everything for years now. And so I dropped all of it, and I said, okay, I need to drop everything, because I don't know how to manage things very well without just taking everything off first. So I dropped everything. I dropped special forces, I dropped the gym, I dropped everything, and I just focused on trying to learn who God is. And I was learning about who God is, and I was reading these books, and I was doing all these things, and I was developing my relationship with God, and I was understanding who God is, how He's perfectly just, merciful, loving, all these things balanced. And the only really way to understand divinity is to be divine. Like, no one understands true divinity. And I had really tried to align myself with what I thought God was trying to do. So I felt like the answer was pretty clear. I just didn't want to accept it yet. And so a couple weeks later, I called my dad and I said, I feel like I understand what the answer is. I just don't know how to do it. I don't know how to quit. My biggest thing is I felt like a failure from certain situations in my life before that I hated the feeling. And I didn't want to feel like a failure here. So I needed to make sure that before I dropped Special Forces that I did the absolute best that I could do to make myself convinced that if I did go, I was going to be one of the people that got selected and to become Special Forces. My recruiter and my coach were just praising me on my scores. And at some point I realized that it wasn't about being accepted by them anymore, being accepted by that community and being brought in by that community, but it was about being accepted into a body of Christ that needed me. And so I made a decision that when I got back to the States, I was going to get involved in a church. I was going to get involved in a church. I was going to get baptized. I was going to be re-brought into everything, and I was just going to be on fire for God. And I was doing my own thing. I was praising God in my house, and I wasn't really going out, but I was just like, I can't wait to get back to the States. I can't wait to be on fire. I can't wait to show God how much I love Him. Show God how much I adore Him. And I kept basing everything off of June, when it's still November, December. I was giving everything so much time, and it was so discouraging because I was like, dude, there's too much time. Like, I don't know what I'm going to do with myself for 5 months, 6 months. And I talked to my parents. My parents were like, sounds like you need to get involved in a church. And at this point, I had already decided to drop Special Forces to pursue Christianity and to pursue being a pastor and pursue school. But I had no idea where I was going to go. And I kept praying about it, and I'm like, God, like, I've dropped everything for you now. I have surrendered everything for you. I have made it to where you are my top priority. My identity revolves around you. I'm done living for myself because it never works out. And I had this idea to reach out to a buddy of mine that I had. When I first came into Bahrain, I had met these people at KOB ICC, and I had met with this guy named Josh, and Josh is a super good dude, and he, always has a positive attitude, and he's super nice, and we had a Bible study, and it didn't really go that well because I was so focused on Party Lux And he was like, well, I don't think you can be a Christian and focus on party looks. I think that these kind of conflict with each other, and it's just kind of in the world. And I don't think that being a Christian kind of aligns with it. And I kept bringing up, well, Jesus was out there with the sinners. Jesus was out there with like the broken. Like, it's no different than what I'm doing. In reality, it's Jesus did that, and I'm not Jesus. But later on, I felt the need to reach back out to him, but I kept pushing it back. And I was like, well, maybe eventually. Like, and then every other day I kept feeling like the need to call him, kept feeling like the need to text him, kept feeling, and one day I was like, okay, you know what? Let me just do it to do it. And then the worst that he can do is neither not text me back or say, no. Like, what are you doing? And so I reached out to him. I said, hey man, I'm just trying to get back into church. And he reached out to me within like less than 5 minutes. And he was like, dude, we're having a Bible study tonight or tomorrow. And he was like, come through, we'll catch back up. So I was there at the Bible study, and from there it's essentially history. I got involved with the KOB ICC, and nothing that they had brought up was stuff that I hadn't already thought about, with denying yourself, picking up your cross daily, and following God, and making God the sole priority. For me, going through the Bible studies this time was easy because I had already devoted myself. I had already said, God, it's not mine anymore, it's yours. And I had already wanted to get baptized, and I devoted myself to the church. And ever since then, life has been a lot easier. Life is just, everything felt God sent. And I'll be leaving here in June to transition out of the military. I plan on coming back and being a missionary, and for a few weeks to a couple months maybe, and then going to school in New York City, attending the ICC in New York City. So yeah, that's my testimony.